Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 150 episodes of mead making education, information, and entertainment. More than 100 guests have stopped by the Mead House, professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey, and brewers just like you and me have all visited to share their knowledge. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support, so get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. You can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House, mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, you know, it's not often I get a chance to just wing it right off the cuff here. But, you know, during the next few episodes, we're going to be talking about some of our sponsors that have helped us out during the 2020 Iron B competition. And one of them is Sap House Meadery. And this is right off the cuff. Now, I know Ash and I have had a pretty special relationship over the last few years. I know him pretty well. We've talked one-on-one, offline, away from the Mead House quite often, and we've also had him on the show for a number of times. I got my box today. I'm a subscriber of the Sap House Meadery Club Med, and you know, the last few boxes that I've gotten from him have just been phenomenal. This one is no doubt one of the best that I've tasted. Sap House Meadery, saphousemeadery.com. Now, there's a guy there that we've talked very little about. His name is Evan Henderson. And Ash put him in charge, basically, of the whole mead program over at Sap House. Ash spends a lot of time over at the brewery, at Hobbs Brewery, giving that a lot of attention. So my hat is off to Evan Henderson over there at Sap House. Now, this dude, he's basically in charge of the entire mead program over there. A couple of meads that I've tasted so far out of this new box is Power of Love. This is a mead that's a wildflower honey aged over for 2 years in a apple brandy barrel. Let me tell you, I mean, you're in for a big surprise. This stuff is just phenomenal. I'll tell you what I'm drinking here a little bit later. It's another Sap House Meadery offering. But Sap House Meadery, they've been proud supporters of the Iron B for the last couple of years, 2019, 2020. Ash and the guys over there at Sap House, thank you so much for your support. And let me tell you, if you want some quality mead, check it out, saphousemeadery.com. And let me tell you something, my one-on-ones and some of the interviews that I've done with Ash, those Patreon key holders, you can go over to patreon.com at the Mead House and listen to those interviews. These guys put so much attention to detail into their meads. It's just unbelievable, okay? And this is why they are so good. I haven't had a bad one yet. So good experience with Sap House Meadery. I highly recommend you join their mead club over there. I believe it's $75 a month, saphousemeadery.com. Get over there and check them out. In the meantime, hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 169. Oh, my God, they are just piling up here at the Mead House. Hey, I was just hanging some new curtains when Jeff and Ryan walked in. I'm JD Webb, and I'll probably have to dust the furniture after they leave. Hey, I know you know where you can listen to the Mead House podcast for free on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and just a whole bunch of other places. They're all listed on the front page of the website. That's themeadhouse.com. Hey, in this episode, we're going to wing it. This is our last episode before we go on our regular 2-week hiatus. I mean, come on, we all need a break. So Mead Day is coming up. What are we planning on celebrating? And then we're going to spend the rest of the night dealing with Facebook friends. We've just got a whole pile of them, a few from Reddit as well. But hey, before we get there, thanks to all the Mead House key holders like Jacob Renner, who just recently joined. I know I mentioned him last time, but hey, I'm not going to keep mentioning these guys over and over and over. I know they like to hear their names, but hey, thanks for joining. And thanks for helping to keep the Mead House podcast free. Hey, you too can become a Mead House key holder. All it takes is a couple of bucks a month to help support the show. We've got some great thank you gifts to send out to you. So just get on over to patreon.com, search the Mead House, or you can just do the simple thing, click on the show notes, the link in the show notes. That's probably the easiest thing. But hey, if you want to look us up, themeadhouse.com, the Mead House over at patreon.com. Hey, what are we drinking tonight? I'm double fisting it. I got a ton of mead in the mail in the last couple of days. I got a big box from Ryan that had, oh my God, all kinds of stuff in it. And I'm just going to have to sit on them for a couple of weeks. Either that or take copious notes and talk about them next time we hook up here at the Mead House. But tonight I'm drinking 2 of them. And the other box also includes the box from Sap House. Right off the bat, I got one. I saw this bottle in there, and it was marked Garden Shed, and I knew exactly what this was. Ryan had been talking about it for the last 2 or 3 shows, I guess, and we kind of went into it in kind of detail, I think, on one of the shows here just recently. Dude, I've already taken a sip or 2. I'm telling you, this should be in a keg, in a kegerator, every summer at your house, okay? This is just absolutely amazing. I get a nice hop aroma. You don't get hardly any of the bitterness out of those hops on the first sip, but you do get tons of flavor, which I really enjoy. It's nice and dry. It's almost tropical in a sense. I mean, this is one that would just keep you sipping after sipping after sipping after sipping, and then reaching in for another bottle. This is really good stuff, Ryan. Congratulations on this one.
Well, thank you, JD. That, I made a 5-gallon batch of it right around there, and that's just about 2 cases worth. And I'm down to just the last handful of bottles, so I'm gonna have to make something else here, and while the weather is still hot, and get another batch of my Garden Shed Braggot going.
I'm telling you, this is pray for hot weather in Minneapolis, because this is one you just need to keep on brewing, dude. It's got a dryness to it that just, I'm starting out on a glass here, on the full glass. But I know when I'm done with this, I'm going to be looking for another bottle. And shame on you for not sending me a second one. Anyway, my other fist, the other offering I'm drinking from Sap House I'm drinking tonight. This is something new and different from them. This one's called Crisp. It's a dry, I'm going to read it right off the label. I know some of you mead makers out there are going to probably scream high heaven, but dry honey apple wine. All right, don't get me wrong. This is definitely a mead. I mean, nothing that comes out of Sap House Meadery is anything but a mead. But let me tell you, this. Let me start out this way. If you like a good Pinot Grigio, if you like a good, even a Sauvignon Blanc, this is right up your alley. Served chilled, not ice cold now, but just chilled. This stuff is just phenomenal. I mean, I'm thinking fettuccine Alfredo, even ravioli with light cream sauce. Dude, this is the perfect mead to have at that supper. I mean, this stuff is just amazing. Mm. Take a sip right there. It's got a mild apple background to it. It finishes really dry. Now, this is not a barrel-aged offering from them, but let me tell you, this is every bit as good as any white wine that you would enjoy. I mean, not quite a Chardonnay. I'm thinking, more on the drier side. The Pinot Grigio's not quite as sweet as that, but like I said, if you're a Pinot Grigio lover, if you're even a Sauvignon Blanc, this is really good stuff. I mean, this is one that I'd set a couple of bottles out on the table if you're serving a nice, Italian dinner with some white cream sauce. So, hats off, Sap House, Evan and the boys over there, Ash. Good job. Really love this crisp from Sap House. So, with that, Jeff, what did you put in your cup tonight?
So, speaking of hot weather, last week we had temperatures in the mid to high 90s. Humid as all get out. It was like walking in soup anytime I even went out to get the mail or take the trash out. And I was running some errands over the weekend and said, man, you know what sounds really good right now? Just a really light, crisp, easygoing German lager. So I went to a liquor store because I was out running errands anyway.
Not Budweiser.
What?
Not Budweiser, right? No.
No. The proper German lager, made in Germany.
Good.
Yeah. And I went to a liquor store that I know they had a good selection of imports. Their selection's smaller now. They've got a whole aisle devoted to craft cocktails and stuff like that, and these seltzers and things like that. So their selection was smaller, and that irritated me a little. But I wound up with a bottle whose name I am absolutely going to butcher. Weihenstephaner, I think, is how that's pronounced. Maybe. You listeners out there that know better, please correct me, because damn. This is a Crystal Weiss beer. So it's a wheat beer, but instead of the German style Hefeweizen, which is unfiltered and has a lot of yeast esters that give you those banana and cloves, this one has been filtered. It's got a much more subdued yeast profile, so it's much cleaner. This is as light and easygoing as it gets. If it were any lighter, it'd be an American macro brew. But it's got that great noble hop backbone to it too. You still get the hoppy flavor to it. There's just that little bit of body. It's really, really carbonated. So, unfortunately, yesterday we got a ton of rain, and it's been mid 70s to high 70s today. So it's not as refreshing as it could be because the weather isn't as bad as it was when I bought this. But this is still darn good. Like JD, I also got my Sap House box. And so tonight I cracked open a bottle of Power of Love, which is a wildflower honey that's been aged for 24 months in apple brandy barrels. And you guys have heard so many times we've talked about the barrel program with Sap House. This is kind of a no-brainer to pop open and take a sample out of, and you get there is a pronounced honey scent to it that plays really nicely with that brandy scent as well. The apple kind of comes through over the mid palate. You get just a little bit of that alcohol kind of vapor at the end, but it's very, very smooth.
You get it kind of finishes with a little bit of it kind of reminds me of those green apples, the Granny Smith tart apples a little bit. It leaves you with that kind of a finish. You get that a little bit at all at the end. Yeah,
like a kind of a puckery little bite. Yeah. I know. I see where you're coming with that.
Yeah. And I get kind of I had a sip of it earlier, and I chilled it down, just not cold, but just chilled, and put it in a glass. And I got, oh man, it was almost sherry like, very brandy like. Man, it just blew me away.
Yeah, no, I mean, what more can we say about the barrel program at Sap House? I think they knocked it out of the park again. There are so many different flavors they're exploring here, and so many like unique flavor combinations. I'm consistently impressed with them. They come up with such really good stuff every time.
Well, he spent a lot of time developing their barrel program, and I know that he and Evan have spent quite a bit of, considerable time mastering their barrel program. And for our Patreon listeners out there, go listen to the two episodes, the latest two episodes that I did with Ash. We kind of went one-on-one with him, and he goes into a little bit more detail about the barrel program a little bit. If you want to learn any more, from it about, from him about it, I encourage you to listen to those two episodes. I think they're around, oh gosh, I'm going to say something like, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, maybe. I don't remember. But make sure you listen to both episodes. It'll give you a good idea of what's going on over at Sap House, and why I said it to lead in. Their attention to detail is like unbelievable. And Ash I know him pretty well. He's a real stickler for perfection, and they do it, and they do it, and they do it right every time. So good stuff, Jeff. Ryan, I mean, if you're not drinking one of these garden sheds, I know you're going to try to hang on to them, but hey, what are you drinking?
So when I met up with Jeff, he gave me a couple of bottles, and he told me what they were, and I had forgotten what, I had one left, and I forgot what it was, and I sent him a message and said, hey, what's this bottle with an S on it? And an S on the cap. And he said, oh, that's my strawberry Kvike. And I said, excellent. I'll drink that on the show this week. I'll give it a shot. I'll drink it on the show. It sounds like it'll be, really good. We got some hot, there's some warm weather here, and great. I'm excited about it. And you know what he said back to me, JD?
What's that?
He said, you might want to get your infinity bottle ready, because that one, might end up in your infinity bottle.
It finished a little sweeter than I intended. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, being someone who likes on the dry side anyway, it definitely was sweet. It was sweet for me. So I drank some. I wanted to taste it. I did get some really interesting flavors out of it. I got the Kvite, had a pretty interesting representation, almost a little bit of a sour. And I know you got to be careful when we say that word, because I don't mean infected and I don't mean Brett, but I mean just a little bit of a tartness that was coming out the way it was playing, and then the strawberries were, which are very delicate to begin with, were there, but I think kind of were a little overwhelmed with the sweetness and the tartness that was coming through. And then he had said that had faded, so I assume the berries are what he meant, that they had faded pretty quickly out of this mead. So I was trying to pick up the pieces as kind of being like an anthropologist or an archaeologist, I should say. I was kind of being the Indiana Jones of this mead bottle.
There you go.
And I did that for a couple ounces, and then I infinitied the rest. And it's a great addition to the infinity bottle here, because it's melding well with everything else. So I got a little sip left in the cup of Jeff's strawberry Kvike, and then I'll pour an infinity drink here a little later and have that. It's getting pretty interesting right now. There's still as things dilute out, so they're not as strong. But in there there's an elderberry. There is a couple of different sizers. There is now Jeff's. There is some some kind of like fruit salad type, like a mixed, melomel, this mixed melomel in there, and it's pretty good. It's a little on the sweet end right now, but I don't mind that. I just make a spritzer out of it. The key to the infinity bottle is it's gotta always be full. So I keep this thing just the way you'd buy it out of a store, at the swing top, where there's just about filled to the top. And so I do that. I keep it, you keep it full, you keep it in an airtight bottle, you keep it in the fridge, and you don't get that oxidation that you'll get with with an open bottle.
Yeah.
I know that was a couple of questions I had gotten about when I talk about this. Is doesn't it just get oxidized, and doesn't it just kind of go bad on you? No, not if you keep it full, keep it airtight, and keep it in the fridge.
Yep. There you go. I tell you, man, I have never enjoyed two drinks better than these two that I'm drinking here tonight. I mean, this stuff is just simply amazing. This apple wine and this mead, as it starts to warm up in my glass a little bit, I only poured a couple of ounces at the start, but I do have the chilled bottle on my desk. The label is a little bit unusual for Sap House. It doesn't look anything like the previous bottles of mead that you ever got. This is a 750 bottle, which is kind of unusual for Sap House to begin with, because they usually do everything in 375. So I mean, this is a perfect wine to enjoy with dinner. Set it on a table or keep it on ice. And, serve it with your best Italian or pork dinner, even a chicken, some kind of a baked chicken or something with maybe a little mango salsa over the top. This is, I mean, they call it a dry honey apple wine, but there is tons of honey right off the top as this thing warms up. Finishes nice and dry, just amazing stuff. And Ryan, this garden shed, dude, you need to come up with, you need to go over to like Grog Tag or some label place somewhere and make up some labels for this stuff. You need to keep making this. You need to put this, you need to start investing in kegs and start kegging this stuff up. Even if you have to, I mean, come on. I mean, a 5-pound CO2 bottle is less than $80. I mean, there's nothing to charge. I think my local homebrew store charges me like $11 to charge my 5-pound bottles. I mean, that's nothing. Kegs are cheaper than hell these days. Start putting things in kegs and start charging these things up with some CO2 and just leave them sit. And then, you can fill your bottles from there, or, build yourself a kegerator. Now that you're getting settled in, that's the next step. And just keep a keg of this thing going all the time. I mean, this stuff is really good, guy. So good. Where'd my notes go here? A mead day is coming up. And I don't know what day is it anyway. Does anybody know?
It's the first.
The first. So it's like in like 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you planning on celebrating on Mead Day? Ryan, I mean, come on, guy. I know the garden shed thing is a good start, but you got anything planned for Mead Day?
So Mead Day, typically in some of the homebrew clubs around here, would have like an event, and people would get together at somebody's house, or homebrew stores parking lot or something, and have a kind of like a brew day. People get together and they'd share bottles, share their meads, and make a batch and things like that. And it's not happening this year. There's no social aspect of it. So I've got, just like you, JD, and I've got some fantastic meads downstairs, and I think I'm gonna celebrate by drinking some good commercial meads from some of our good friends, and enjoying those, and doing that. So, Sap House as well for me is more than a meadery. It's more like an inspiration, because there are a lot of meads that I've had, a lot of commercial meads, and I've been lucky enough to have tried many of them, and I drink them and I think they're good, or well, I see what they're doing here. This is nice. But when I drink a lot of Ash's stuff, it really inspires me to think about it and think about how I'm going to approach my next batch, or a batch, something like that. So I do, and not to say that other meads don't do that as well, but I'll give you an example of some of his coffee mead. How much time we talked about coffee? Yeah. But the way that you drink one of Ash's coffee meads, and you think about how you're going to approach it and what you're going to do, and he's also such an open book about what he did that it kind of helps you out there. So I'm going to think a lot about to drink some commercial meads and really take some time with them, and instead of just necessarily cracking a bottle and drinking it and enjoying it, and just kind of of course I'll enjoy it, but I really kind of want to sit with these and think about the vision that the mead makers had and how they crafted those, and what you can take away. Are there things that you like or things that you didn't like that can inspire you or make you think a little bit as you're approaching your next batch? And I'll do that with, I probably might crack bottles from 2 or 3 different meaderies, and I'll bet you that I sit down and I can think about them, and I can have some good inspiration and takeaways, from all 3 meaderies. Yeah.
I think our listeners probably think I'm just a bourbon hound here when I keep talking about my bourbons, but little do they know, and maybe I've explained it on the show before, but my whole bourbon experience started because I was looking for a bourbon to mesh with a mead. Age some wood in, maybe drop a couple of ounces or a cup or 2 of bourbon into a mead, but I just didn't want to use any old mead, any old bourbon. And once I started down the bourbon road, I started discovering all these different flavors, and I kept thinking, would this bourbon go with mead? Would this bourbon go with mead? And so now I've kind of developed my list, my go-to bourbons if I want to, put some in a mead or work with a mead with it. But things like simple bourbon like Maker's Mark. There's a sweetness to it that adds a good flavor to, if you want to do like a quote unquote barrel aged bourbon mead, versus doing, using something like Colonel Taylor, E.H. Taylor. I would no more use that in a mead than just add water. It's just not the kind of bourbon you want to do that with. So that was starting of my journey with this bourbon thing. And what it took, like you're talking about, is sitting down with them and really spending time and determining what flavors, you're thinking of. And to me, the kind of flavors that I want to come out in a barrel-aged project using a traditional mead, or the caramels, the brown sugars. I want some vanillas to come out in it. So that leads me down a real narrow path of bourbons that I want to incorporate into that project. And I think, like you're talking about, using the stuff we get from Sap House. I mean, drinking some of his meads and spending time with them, or anybody else's for that matter, and coming up with that inspiration. I think that's an important part of mead making. Jeff, what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. There is definitely a time for, I don't want to say introspection because that sounds really, really
deep.
Yeah, but you gotta. It's a good thing to sit down and take a drink and think about it and really examine what you're drinking. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we as judges have to do a lot. It's kind of a mode for us, but for a lot of people, I think the first impulse is to take a drink and go, oh, I like this, or I don't like this.
Yeah.
And then, I'm going to take another drink or I'm not. But taking the time to sit down and go, well, I like the way that this flavor was presented, or this could be a little stronger for me, or this could be a little bit more subdued for me. It kind of has a taste that I don't particularly like. And seeing what people that really know what they're doing are doing well can serve as a great inspiration for where you want to go. Especially, like Ryan said, people like Ash that will tell you how they got there. You can save a lot of steps just figuring out what you like and kind of piecing together how it was done by other people, so that you can maybe not replicate but get pretty close to a result you like as well for your own brews. Yeah. So I think absolutely taking some time to sit and think and just drink thoughtfully is probably how I would say it.
Well, yeah, I can get into that. I mean, sometimes I'll sit here with a couple of fingers of bourbon, and it might take me 2 hours to drink it.
There you go.
I'm interested in every component. I mean, I do that sometimes with even a glass of wine. I mean, I've had many. I try to drink a glass of red wine a night, or actually a day, whether it's for lunch or dinner. And that's on the, that comes from my cardiologist.
Right.
And so I try to do that every day. So I've drank a lot of wine, okay? And but I'm the same way with the wines. I mean, sometimes I'll just sit here and contemplate them. It might take me a couple hours just to drink, a 4-ounce pour of a red wine, something I've never had before. I love some of these barrel-aged Cabernets that I've been drinking here lately. I mean, some of them are just, outstanding. And but that only comes when you're able to spend time with them. Not when you're a teenager, you guzzle the alcohol down because the whole point is to get drunk and get your girlfriend. You know what I mean? When you get older, that all kind of goes away, and you start learning to appreciate alcohol a little bit more. Ryan, I just, maybe it comes with age. I mean, I know you guys are quite a bit younger, but is that how you're seeing things now? Or you learn to appreciate more of the effort that's put into the libation that you're drinking? Where it came from, the flavors that come together and all that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned on a show not too long ago that, in college we drank a lot of cheap beer. I mean, maybe even calling it beer would be generous. It might have been some bulk beverage. And we drank just the vodkas and rums and stuff like that, just for the point of getting the buzz.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I've gotten a little more mature, and I'd say that even happened, I'd say even the later end of, the later half of college. Yeah, you drink, your appreciation changes a little bit, or maybe you always appreciate it, but now you could afford it.
Yeah.
afford some of the nicer things. So yeah, I mean, my tastes have changed. I mean, there was a time in my life where I was on that bitterness train. That when all the breweries were trying to one up each other on the bitterness, and you go, 60 IBUs, 70 IBUs, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, and it was just kind of like a one upping each other. I mean, you might not even have liked, when they got to 90 IBUs or something, but man, it was sure manly to drink those. If you said, oh yeah, I'll take the quadruple IPA or something.
Yeah.
No, and I think what also comes with age is just saying, I don't care about the fad. I don't care about what's trendy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about what's the hot thing right now, what's in vogue. This is what I like, and this is what I'm going to drink. And that's the only person I'm trying to impress is myself.
Yep.
Because that's the that's only a thing I'm answering to. So, like I said, one of the things in the beer world, I like good American IPAs. I'm sorry, American pale ales.
Yeah.
I don't just like 35 IBU or 30 IBU, and they're really nice, solid beer, a little bit of bitterness. I mean, things like that. I walk in and drink a pale ale, and don't care if you get a sideways look for not ordering an IPA. That years past. Or in the mead world, I know what I like. I like drier things. Or, I mean, I say balance. Of course, I'll drink something that might be sweet gravity-wise, but really balanced. But I know what I like. And there are some absolute, world-renowned mead makers that, everyone talks about, how great they are. And, of course, they're great. But I've had their stuff, and their stuff is too sweet for me.
Yeah.
And so you could walk up to me with probably, some of the best bottles of mead that the mead, fanboys or fangirls, whatever, are going to say, look at this. I scored this bottle. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this just this is, limited and rare, and, it's from this meadery and all this stuff. And, great. I mean, yeah, I've tried them. I've had them. I hope that but it's not what I want to drink.
Yeah.
If you like it, great. I hope that you enjoy it, and you didn't just spend all that money because everyone else around you told you how great it was. That kind of. So I'll get off my soapbox here and just say, my number one rule of brewing is brew to drink. And, my number one rule of commercial drinking is very similar. It's, buy what you like and to drink.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in my house. I mean, I brew stuff that I like to drink. Unfortunately, my neighbors like to drink it too. Of course, they're just after the free alcohol. So it's not like I can keep a whole lot of stuff in the kegerator all one time. But I do hide away a couple of kegs on occasion just so I can have stuff to drink, or at least more of it. So, hey, Mead Day coming up here on the 1st. We told you what our deal is. I'm just going to sit around in the house here and, like Ryan, drink some mead, contemplate it. That's how I'll spend my day. Maybe pick up an inspiration or two, and maybe move into, something I've never done before. I do need to get some more loaded up. I've been hesitant in getting anything started because I just, for one, I have to kind of cut back on all the alcohol that I'm drinking, doctor's orders. But the other thing is, I mean, my God, I've got like full kegs everywhere. And I just say, I'm starting to run out, and the wife is starting to talk about why did you order 2 more kegs? You've got like 12 of them. So I have to kind of gauge things a little bit, but anyway, I do like picking up inspirations from drinking other people's meads, like Ryan says, and maybe taking some notes and maybe playing around with a recipe or two. So again, that's how I'm going to spend my mead day. We hope your mead day is something special. Maybe you've got a recipe that you've been thinking about that you want to put together, and that's how you're going to celebrate it. We'd love to hear about it if you do. Get hold of us. Send us an email, info@themeathouse.com, or like a lot of people do, just jump on the Facebook deal there and send us a message through the whatever it is, a messenger thing, or I don't know how those messages work, but anyway, we get a ton of them all the time. So you can do that on Facebook as well. We even got the tweeter thing too. So at the Mead House. So any one of those, let us know what you're doing for Mead Day, and we'll gladly put it on the air for you. One of the things that we just thoroughly enjoy doing here at the house is dealing with a lot of these Facebook friends and Reddit friends that we have, and listener friends that we run across all the time. And, this is an opportunity where, we get to answer some questions based on no formal expertise. None of us are experts here. But each of us have varying degrees of formality or expertise, or whatever you want to call it. And so we like to share and talk about some of the questions that we do come across on occasion. So we're going to do that now. I think, we left off a bunch of them last week, guys. Jeff, there's a ton of them here or not a ton, but there's a few of them here from Reddit. I'm just going to start from the top. Maybe you can catch up. This is from Finster Folly, talking about stalled fermentation. And I think we've talked about this once before, but like a long time ago. Before episode 100 even. But this one says he started his first mead over a month ago. It has stalled out a second time. It is a basic mead with 3 gallons of Tupelo honey and water to fill a 1 gallon. Now, this can't be right. Okay, I'm going to read it verbatim like I got it. You may see something different. It is a basic mead with 3 gallons of Tupelo honey and water to fill a 1 gallon carboy.
Let's assume that he means 3 pounds of Tupelo honey as opposed
Let's
to
assume. I'd like to, I'd like to see, I'd actually like to see somebody do that. 3 gallons of Tupelo honey and 1 gallon. Okay, yeah, let's call it.
I'm pretty sure if we both shade them enough, that might be possible, but I'm pretty sure I wouldn't want to drink that afterwards. No.
Yeah. He goes on to say, I did add a bit of generic yeast nutrient to start, and I dry pitched with D47. We'll talk about that. OG estimate was around 105. No hydrometer at the time, so I'm not quite sure how he's coming up with that. Seems awful precise at 1.105. Fermentation was pretty strong for a while, then it stalled at, again, 1040. How he knows that, I don't know. But racking to a secondary, degassed some of the CO2 and woke it up a bit. 10 days later, it is sitting at 1.032, 9.5 on the ABV scale, and is kind of sickly sweet. I did some search for stalled fermentations here for guidance. One thread suggested that the white crystal nutrient, I think he's talking about DAP, the use wasn't enough, and then was typical to stall out at 9 to 10% ABV. Should I hit it with a different nutrient or combo? Do I repitch both, or do I enjoy my alcoholic honey as a learning lesson to move on? Anyway, blah, 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 blah. A lot to capture there.
I think I can unpack some of this.
Yeah.
So he says OG estimate around 1105. And I think what he's doing is he's taking, there's a very basic rule of thumb that people throw around a lot on Facebook and Reddit that generally a pound of honey in a gallon of water equals 35 points. So 3 times 35, 105.
Okay.
I think that's where he's coming from. I'm assuming that by the time he got to where he got to that stall at 1040, he probably had a hydrometer by then. He mentions not having a hydrometer at the time of pitch. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he wised up and got one of those. Says 10 days later, it's at 1032 and sickly sweet. He's talking about a white crystal nutrient, and I think what he's talking about is I don't know if, I'm assuming there are multiple brands of this, but this is like a kind of a generic wine nutrient. I know LD Carlson makes a version of it, and I'm pretty sure it does have some DAP in it. It has some mineral content to it, I'm sure. I'm not sure what goes into that, but I've seen it used for mead making. I'm not convinced it makes a good nutrient for mead either. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend the Fermate family of, nutrients there, whether it's K or O, kind of dealer's choice. I prefer K just because it seems like a better value, and I'm a little cheap like that because it costs half as much and I use half as much. So, yeah, like JD said, we should probably address the D47 as well because it's the middle of summer, and D47 is known to be finicky above 68 degrees. If I were giving this guy advice, I would say, yeah, you need to repitch. I would use like a K1B or an EC1118. They're both known for being good at repitching a stuck fermentation for one. You should hydrate that, and you should pitch it with some Fermate K or Fermate O, just as a little bit of a yeast nutrient. Maybe since you're already at 1040, hit it with half the package recommendation. That way there's not too much left over. But that'd be my advice.
Yeah, Ryan, D47 has got my full attention here. That's a pretty finicky yeast to begin with. And if he's in a stuck fermentation, I got to go along with Jeff, 1118, 1116 to get that thing restarted and watch the temps.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, more of a question here. I mean, first of all, that's 70 plus points that he got out of it. I mean, how much more can you expect at a D47, number one?
Yeah.
But then number two is you say, where he's already at, Jeff, you say that let's just say he's going to use EC 1118 instead of adding nutrients. What would you think? What would you think about rehydrating with like Go Firm or something like that, and then pitching rather than rehydrating, pitching, and then adding like Fermate or something? Do you have any thoughts on if that one might be better?
That could work as well. Again, I don't know the precise nutrient like quantities or formulations for Go Firm versus Fermate O or Fermate K. I would assume that you're going to get a good amount of nutrient to get that yeast kicking and going with either product. And if he's just looking at getting the last 40 points or so off, or maybe even he's just wanting an extra 10 or 20 points off, that could get him there. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say 20 more points is probably the most at what you'd want out of that.
Good stuff, guys. Moving on to the next one here. This is another one from Reddit, kind of left over from last week, guys. Jeff, this one is by Several Lingonberry. I love the name.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Says, is my honey fermenting in bottle without any yeast? Says, I prepared more must than fit into my carboy, so I bottled leftovers. They never touched any yeast. My hope was to add these to the mead when I racked. 4 weeks later, one of the 3 bottles is bubbling. I transferred all the bottles to safe location should they blow up, but my question is, are they going to blow up? Why is it bubbling? Again, it's a sealed bottle of must, never touched the yeast. Brian, I think your brother-in-law had a similar situation to this. Do you want to take this one?
Well, it was my brother, actually, yeah.
Yes, your brother. Sorry.
Brother Jesse. So yeast is everywhere. Yeast is everywhere, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the honey. It's in the air. It's in your beard. It is absolutely everywhere. So just because you didn't add any cultured commercial strain of it doesn't mean that there was no yeast added to it. I mean, you get a jar of honey at home, and let's say you use it on your tea and toast, and you use it just about all of it up, and just fill it up with water. Put the lid back on it, set it on the counter, and in a couple days, you'll be feeling some pressure, just because there's absolutely yeast in that, whether it was from the honey or the air or anything else. So yes, it is fermenting. I doubt it's going to blow up on you. I mean, even if you have an airlock on it, you put an airlock on it, for crying out loud. But I doubt it would blow up. He said it's sealed, right? He said something sealed. Yeah. Well, sure, put an airlock on it, because you don't know how much pressure you got in there or what it's in. Sealed bottle, but yeah, do that, and you never know, like the tolerance of what you're going to get with the wild yeast. It's oftentimes a lot higher than most people think it'll be, but yeah, that's the magic of yeast biology.
There you go. I agree.
Yeah.
The honey, you don't have to put yeast in honey and water to have it ferment. Not by a long shot. That's how this whole thing started in the first place.
Right. Realistically, the only thing that's keeping that yeast from kicking off is the fact that honey is so hydrophilic. It's pulling all of the water out and kind of putting that yeast in a little suspended animation. When you dilute it to the point where it doesn't have that property anymore, all bets are off.
Yeah, Ryan. Back in the day, I mean, it would behoove people who want to make mead to go back in history, and I mean, this is how I learned about it. I knew before I even started that you don't need bread yeast and a bunch of oranges to get honey and water to start fermenting. I learned that by reading about how mead even got started. And so once you go back in history and you don't have to do a real in-depth study on mead making. Just, learn about the history a little bit, and you'll discover that, back in the day, before there was a D47 or a 71B or a Kavik, I mean, the yeast that was found was actually in the honey itself.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say about this, and we'll move on, is, there's a lot of listeners to the show that really like historical meats. They always say they want to make stuff the old-fashioned way or the old way and things like that. Look at all the old recipes that you can find of beer, wine, mead, cider. None of them have yeast as an ingredient.
Right.
I mean, I think the first time I saw yeast as an ingredient, now, I mean, I could be way off on this, but the first one that comes to mind is a recipe, I think into the 17 or maybe 1800s, probably 1700s, that actually called for yeast as an ingredient. I mean, prior to that, there was no, they said, oh, you add your honey or you add your malt and you add hops or, sprig of rosemary or your berries or whatever it was, but there was no mention of adding yeast. So, keep that in mind as well as we move on, because we could spin on that for a while.
Well, the next one's yours anyway, Ryan. So keep on trucking here. This one's by user Seth Ray on Micro Meads and Brewers. Go ahead.
This one might have been mine.
Is that one Jeff's?
Oh, I thought he wanted me to read it but please, you do the voices on the way that he wrote it out.
So, okay. Seth Ray on Micromeads and Brewers on Facebook says, "Okay, bring out ye whips and flogs. I've got possibly huge mistakes and/or physics impossibilities and/or mechanical malfunctions. Yesterday, I took SG measurements of my 3 batches in primary. My mixed berry batch had increased its SG according to my refractometer. I talked to John Duncan, we had him on the show before, and figured it was just a faulty reading, decided to leave it until today to take another measurement, only to find all 3 batches have increased specific gravities. My Google foo fails me. I don't know what the issue is other than adding a bit of yeast nutrient last week. Well, the Pink Dragon recipe kind of got restarted, but that one recipe is my primary concern compared to the other 2. Says he's got pictures of his journals with the recipes, generalizations, measurements as well as pics from his refractometer. Has the refractometer failed me? My hydrometer tube got accidentally melted, but the dipper was fine until today when I noticed it was holding liquid." So yeah, again, there's a lot.
His hydrometer got accidentally melted.
I love that one.
I don't know the recipe or anything on there, but I'll say that I see often what happens a little bit. I've seen this happen before. Is guys throw berries in mead, or in their must. They take 5 pounds of raspberries or something like that, 10 pounds of strawberries.
Yeah.
And they mix in their honey, and they take a reading, and they'll take a reading, and they're not accounting for any of the sugar that's in the fruit. So you're getting a reading that's deliberately lower because that the fruit hasn't given up its sugar yet.
Right.
And so you'll see that, and that's why we always talk about the lalzymes, the enzymes that will break down the fruit even before you pitch. You can do that. Mm-hmm. The other one I'll see, and I've seen this before too, is people will put a bunch of honey in and not mix it up real well. And there's kind of like that layer on the bottom. They take a reading and they're taking kind of, again, a false reading. Now, again, depending on what you're making, not necessarily a big deal. I mean, if you're making a hydromel or something, or even a braggot, and you dump 3 pounds of honey in and they just sink to the bottom, it's not a big deal to mix them all up. I mean, that's going to get eaten up relatively quickly. I mean, it'd probably be a lot bigger deal if you were trying to make a standard strength, sweet meat or something. But those are the 2 things that come to mind where I have seen experiences in that. It's not a unique problem. I've seen people say that, like, oh my gosh, I measured it was 1070, and then it's been bubbling like crazy for 3 days, and I measured again, it's at 1071 or something. It's like, well, okay, did you take your fruit, figure your fruit, or is your honey just sitting on the bottom of the tank?
There you go.
Yeah. I want to address a couple of Ryan's comments, and then I want to throw out another possibility here. With regards to the fruit not giving up its sugars, I think the other thing to consider here is that a lot of whole fruit, if you're going to be using that, also contains just a lot of water. And I'm honestly willing to bet ratio of sugar to water, the fruit may actually dilute it slightly, more than it contributes gravity to it. That said, I totally agree that there is a distinct possibility with that latter option of that layer of honey that didn't quite get mixed in. But there's one more thing that I cued into in this that I think is probably where we're seeing the issue. And the fact is that he's using a refractometer instead of a hydrometer. And my guess is that he's not taking those readings and putting them through like a refractometer correction calculator. Because refractometers don't read density the same way that a hydrometer does. It actually determines density through the way light refracts through the solution, which works great for sugars. But once you add alcohol to that mix, once it's been fermenting for a while, then it gives you really bad, really odd readings. So, generally, if you're going to use a refractometer through the brewing process, you want to follow that up. Use a calculator to plug in your initial gravity, where it's at now, and I think temperature is also included in there just for minor corrections and things like that. But I know I've tried to use a refractometer in the midst of a fermentation and found what was supposed to be what turned out to be a completely dry finished mead was still reading like 1020. So my readings were way off just from the presence of alcohol in the brew. So I think if you plug those readings into a refractometer correction calculator online, just Google search that, real easy to find. You're going to find your OG is dropping, or sorry, your SG is dropping correctly the way it should be.
Sounds good to me.
And get a hydrometer because they're so much easier to use.
Get a hydrometer.
Fermentation. Replace that broken one.
Yeah, they're like what, $7? I mean, come on. Right. Good stuff. All right, this is another one, Jeff. This may be a leftover also here. User James Thomas on Micro Meads and Brewers. It says, "Hey group, I need some help, suggestions on a mango mead that is being a problem child. Started with 3.5 pounds of orange blossom honey, more than I normally use. A pack of Red Star Cote de Blanc, which is pretty decent. I've used that in the past on some lighter fruits. If you're looking for kind of a white wine type of thing. Both the Energizer and Fermento, and the mango was from Lore and Oil, 1 dram. I'm a little perturbed there, or confused, or confounded,
it's
or
a flavoring oil.
What the hell is Loran oil?
That's the brand name. It's a flavoring oil they use in pastries and things like that.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, so it shouldn't be a problem. OG was 1136. Would exceed the tolerance of the yeast. Well, sometimes. Checked 12 days later, it was 1076 with little to no airlock activity. Checked again a week later, and it was 1072. Figured it was stuck, and dry pitched some Red Star Cuvée. Don't think that was a good idea. No real activity, and a week later it was 1062. Let it go another 9 days, and it was 1056. At that point, I racked off the leaves and pitched with hydrated, energized Cuvée again. I think I would have went with the 1116, 1118. We just covered that in another one. I figured to give it a relative fresh start, 9 more days, and it's 1052. Any thoughts, suggestions, blah, 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 blah. I think repitch. I think he should have gone with the 2 standards, so either 1118, 1116 on the repitch. I think that would have fired this thing back up again, and probably would have taken it where he wanted it to be in the first place. I don't know about pitching like Cuvée. I don't know a lot about Cuvée, but I don't think that was the yeast to do a repitch with.
I think Cuvée might be their champagne style yeast, so that might be where that launch was coming.
Yeah,
from.
maybe. I just never heard of pitching Cuvée as a, But I mean, if it is, that's fine. I'll go along with that. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, he's sitting at about, trying to do the quick math here, right around 11-ish%. I mean, and he's what has he done? He's pitched a couple of different times. I think he's pitched three times. He's now pitched the yeast on this thing. I think you need to be patient. I mean, the thing is, when you start with really high gravity meads, it kind of like a freight train, a heavy freight train rolling on the tracks. It starts turning those wheels pretty slow until it really gets moving. So I think he might have been a little bit quick to do some of this. You've thrown 3 packs of yeast at it. I mean, it sounds like he's doing 1 gallon here, 3.5 pounds into 1 gallon. I mean, you've literally thrown enough yeast at it now to inoculate about 20 gallons. and you got 1 gallon. So just, be patient. Just let it kind of go. You're at about 11%. I think, you racked it fine. Let it chug a little bit here. Top it up and just kind of let it go. There's nothing you can really do at this point in terms of adding. I would suggest necessarily in terms of adding any more nutrients or anything like that to it. So, if you got some, I think you just kind of go with it here at this point.
Yeah.
Reading this, the weird thing is with these slowdowns, I would have thought racking would have done more for him. My experience when I get these kind of slowdowns a little more than halfway through the ferment, like a nice splash rack to get it off the leaves, tends to throw a little bit more oxygen in there, kind of just picks the yeast back up, gets it moving again. I'm surprised that didn't happen here. But yeah, no, he's thrown plenty of yeast on this. It is still moving, albeit slowly. So I don't know that there's a lot more he needs to do other than just be patient and let things happen, because that's how I'd handle it. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, a good degassing now and again. And the thing about the one thing probably the biggest lesson that I've learned about this mead baking thing is patience. Okay, just have patience. All right, stop staring at the airlock. Okay, yep. and it doesn't matter how many bubbles per second you see. Okay, as long as you're seeing bubbles in the airlock. Okay, if you're not seeing bubbles in the airlock, then pop the lid and see if you see any little some foam. Check around the edges of the fermenter. You see any little bubbles forming around the edge. That's a good idea, a good indication that it's fermenting. And at that point, just put the lid back on and be patient. Use a hydrometer, check it every couple of days, and just go watch TV.
Let me revise that statement a little bit, because we've got busy lives. We talked early in the episode about like mindfully drinking some nice alcohol or a nice beverage and tasting it and really picking out what you like and don't like about it. But we don't really have time to stare at the bubblers, especially at the slow rate that this guy's is going. As long as you're seeing movement on that hydrometer over the course of a few days, you're in good shape.
Yeah,
patience is usually the best thing you can put to beat.
I'm 67 years old. How long do you think I stare at my airlocks every day? No thanks. Okay, so moving on here, some new stuff here. I started making mead. Started making my first mead today. Wish me luck. Good luck. And I don't know of its actual thing, but in the Witcher games, geez, Ryan, this has got to be one you put in. But in the Witcher games, I don't even know what Witcher games are. There's references to triple mead. Curious to what it is and how hard it is to make. And of course, Ryan's notes in here is Jeff. I assume he's talking about Polish meads. Can you walk us through the Polish mead basics?
So, yes, I assume he's talking about a Polish mead as well, because for those of you not in the know like JD, The Witcher is a video game series in this kind of grimdark fantasy world that's based on a Polish author. So I'm assuming when he talks about a triple mead, he's probably talking about a trojniak, which is a Polish term for, I want to say it's, I can never remember, is it 3 parts honey and 1 part water, or 1 part water, 3 parts water, 1 part honey. It's one of the two. It's a strong-ish mead. I want to say it would be, no, I'm going to have to look that up here in a second. But when it comes to making Polish meads, the saying is that you're making mead for your children. This is something you're going to plan on aging for a very long time. It's going to be very strong. You're going to note probably presence of a little bit of sherry oxidization, but not a lot. And, there's a lot of different kind of fruits or flavors that you can throw in here. Raspberry's popular. The kind of buckwheat honey is a popular one as well, but it really plays nicely with a lot of different flavors. I think I've heard of like plum being used as well. It's one of those indigenous fruits for that region of Europe that you just get huge harvests of every year, and they kind of need to do something with it, so might as well make alcohol, right? But yeah, this is a very strong mead. Kind of think something in terms of like for commercially available stuff, that Viking blood, if you can find that, in the 15 to 18% range, if not higher. And like I said, long aged probably has some oak or some barrel notes just from that long aging as well. Yeah, that would
something.
That would be how I would describe the style. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think the Trojniak is 1 part honey to 2 parts water, and then I don't pronounce Polish very well, but the Drozhniak, is 1 part honey and 1 part water. And then there's another one that's, 1 part honey, 3 parts water. And then there's one that's like 1 part honey, half part water. And they...
Yes,
and they,
Ryan, you are correct. I just looked this up. So the Trojniak, which mówię po polsku, mało. The literal meaning is 3 parts. It's 1 part honey, 2 parts water, which is still pretty strong. And apparently it's in the neighborhood of like 12 to 15% EBD.
My wife likes drinking, and we've talked about it here on the show before, Jeff, that mead, it's like a Polish mead, it's Majord or something. I think it's called. I'm sure I'm just mispronouncing to hell the name, but it's Majord, like MJORD or something like that on the label.
Mjord. Yeah,
something
Mjord.
like that. Yeah, my wife loves that stuff, and I guess that's a Polish mead. I mean, it's got all kinds of funky writing on it that I have no idea what it says. But is that what we're talking about here?
It could be. I'm not
something along that line
with Mjord, but I mean, if you see a bottle that says Mild Pitny, MIODPITNY, I believe this is spelling. That's essentially it's potable honey. It's mead. It's honey wine. So yeah, that would definitely be a Polish mead. There are a number of other breweries. I think the Viking blood and its different variations are out of Denmark, which is nearby geographically. So that region of the world has a few different people making it. But yeah, no, we're talking about a stronger mead. We're talking about something that it probably drinks more like a dessert wine than anything else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Ryan, you wanted to finish off with something.
No, that's good. I think we're good on that one. Yeah.
Good deal. All right, you're up next again with I have a sweet sack mead. Go ahead.
It's important to add the word mead on the end of that sentence.
Yeah.
I have a sweet sack mead that has been in primary for about 3 weeks, and I'll be racking it to secondary shortly. I'm planning another batch of the same mead and was wondering if I could just combine water and honey in a sanitized bottle and then pour it on the yeast cake from the first mead. If that's tenable, would I follow the same nutrient additions that I used for the first mead?
I say yes.
Simple and to the point. I like your answer. Jeff?
Yeah, no. I mean, so here's the thing. You could make an argument that if you're just going to pour it on the yeast cake, the yeast could potentially autolyze some of the dead yeast, and you wouldn't need to use as much nutrient. You don't want it to do that. That throws off flavors. It can get kind of nasty, especially if that autolysis gets really, really pronounced. Then you get this bitter flavor that you cannot get rid of or back sweeten for hell or high water. It's always there. I would say absolutely, like JD said, follow the same nutrient schedule. Don't make it rely on eating. It's dead. Just feed it right.
Brian?
Yeah. So I'd say two things on this one. Number one, I've done this. If you're going to do it, you don't even need to add you don't need to mix it up in a sanitized bottle. If you're going right into the fermenter with the yeast cake on the bottom of it, why are you going through the extra step of putting it in a different bottle and mixing it up and then pouring it on top? Just pour the honey and water right in the fermenter and start it up again. I've done that before where I rack out of a fermenter and then I put stuff right on top. So I would do that. You want to stir it up anyway. So. Yeah. So absolutely. Now the second part is if you meant that differently, like you're just going to take the yeast cake and put it in your new sanitized bottle, then you don't need all of it. I mean, at that point, what I would do is I would just take some of it and culture it up, on a stir plate or even if you don't have a stir plate, just in some sort of a bottle and get it going again and then pitch it. But yes, you can absolutely do that, and it's no problem. Like I said, I've done it.
Fortified Mead. I brewed my first gallon a while back, and it came out way too dry due to an over strong variety of yeast. Live and learn. So I have fortified the batch, and I am about to start slowly back sweetening to a semi-sweet end product. Has anyone else made fortified mead? Yes, I did. If so, did you like it? Oh, hell yes. Edit. I have finished my work and now have a tasty semi-sweet fortified mead. It will be more precise next time I brew, though, because this is definitely a sipping drink, and I wanted something I could drink a pint at a time.
You want a pint of a fortified beverage at a time?
Yeah.
No, he's saying this. He's saying he wanted something he could drink a pint at a time, and he ended up with something he could only sip.
Yeah. The fortified, several things missing. I wish I knew what his recipe was, the amount of honey, and what he used to fortify his mead with. The reason why I was a little glowing on this is because, yes, I have done fortified mead. My 2 port wine meads. Those are both fortified, one with cognac, one with brandy. And it did make a nice, not something as more of a dessert wine. I mean, if you're familiar with port wines, little on the high ABV side. And I'm pushing 19%. Actually, I'm over 19.5 on one and 19 on the other. But I mean, I wish I knew more, Ryan. You think?
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what he fortified them with, and the way he said this, I almost wonder if he would have just preferred to stabilize and then back sweeten, because he said he wanted something he could drink a pint of, and he ended up with something that was definitely a sipping drink. So maybe next time if that happens, he wants to just stabilize it and then back sweeten it. But the fortifying, I guess I like where his mind went, or her mind went. I don't know what this was, but sure. It sounds good. I have fortified. I have had them. They are sipping drinks. They're absolutely sipping drinks, but they can be, very good in that way.
Yeah. Jeff, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I would like to know what his intent for the original recipe was, what his original recipe was. If he's saying there's such a disconnect here between, like, he wanted something he could drink a pint of at a time, which to me speaks hydromo, something in the 5 to 7% range at tops, and he winds up with a sipper that's been fortified. And I say he just for generic lack of knowing one way or the other, of course. But man, I think Ryan's right on the money that probably should have just stabilized and back sweetened. Maybe, hit it with a little forced carb. He mentions that the yeast overshot and didn't leave any, or came out way too dry. Probably tells me that he intended to leave some residual sugar, and it overshot and gave him more alcohol than he intended in the first place anyway. So maybe when you go back, just plan on providing the amount of honey or sugar that the yeast is going to eat to get to your intended ABV, then stabilize, back sweeten, and you've got a finished product. That's that kind of a foolproof way to do this.
Yeah. And I'm, I think we tackled another question here about pushing yeast beyond its capability. I mean, just because the yeast tolerance says 14%, that doesn't mean everything stops at 14%.
Right.
Like my 2-port wine, I used a yeast whose tolerance was like 16%. Everything just didn't stop at 16%. I mean, there was a whole process that I went through. It's very tedious, mind you, and very, very. I mean, you pretty much have to have pretty good experience in mead making to accomplish this. But I was able to push a yeast that said its tolerance was 16% up to 19, almost 20%. It takes some doings, but it can be done. The fortification, I'm hoping that he used something really good, not just like, cheap vodka or something. I mean, a good brandy, a good cognac, my God, depending upon his recipe,
Right.
I'd love to hear about what he came up with, for sure.
No, but the idea is definitely, to add some flavor layers here, and give it something you couldn't get from the yeast and honey itself.
Okay, Ryan, I'm going to let you tackle this next one too. This takes us back to the good old days. Go ahead.
Chocolate vanilla coffee mead. I want to get your thoughts on a recipe for a vanilla chocolate coffee mead. My friend roasts his own coffee, and I asked for his help. I have ordered a decaf from Sweet Maria's that he will roast to a City Plus. My other friend makes chocolate for a living, and I have 14 ounces high-quality cocoa nibs that have been extracted and filtered. I also have 3 whole vanilla beans scraped and extracted. I have never brewed anything with coffee and want to dive in after seeing what you guys have done. This is my idea for a 1.5 gallon, hoping to finish with a full gallon plus a little extra after racking. For primary, using EC 1118 yeast, started with Go Firm and step fed with Fermade O/K, 3 pounds medium bochet honey, 1/2 pound lactose sugar, 1/2 pound cold brewed coffee,
half
gallon cold brewed coffee, filtered and strained, water to fill remaining amount. So 1/2 gallon of cold brewed coffee in a 1.5 gallon batch. Secondary, add a 1/2 cup whole bean coffee, back add 1/2 pound medium bochet honey, reading verbatim here, add 6 ounces cocoa extract, add 3 ounces vanilla extract. I plan on letting sit for about 4 to 5 months in secondary before bottling, hoping for a semi-sweet to dry with some bitterness from the chocolate and coffee. What's everyone's thoughts on this? Any changes, tips, suggestions, or should I get straight to work after my coffee comes.
Hmm. Uh, yeah. Let me take a stab at this. Okay. One, I think there's way too much coffee. You don't want this thing to be dry if you can use that much coffee. Yeah, you're going to want some sweetness in there, believe me. The best coffee mead that I have had was somewhat on the dry side, but there was a little bit of residual sweetness in there to kind of counterbalance with the coffee flavor. I don't think you could put a coffee mead together without having some degree of sweetness. Bone dry is just going to, especially if you're using a Bochet honey, that's just going to leave you with a, in my personal opinion, a massive bitterness component that's even the vanilla bean and the cocoa is not being going to be able to overcome. Even the cocoa is going to need some sugar to really take advantage of that cocoa flavor. Not a lot. I mean, we're not talking about hot chocolate here, but I think cutting way down on the coffee is the key here. It's not going to take that much. Now, in the words of one of the best coffee meads that I have had yet, the mead maker, different grinds at different times is a key to coming up with good coffee flavored mead. So, Jeff, throw the mic over to your side of the table. What do you think?
So, looking at the recipe here, he's talking about 3 pounds of Bochet honey. I'm okay with that. I haven't found lactose. I'm not sure you need that, but why not? You need some sugar in there, like you guys said. I do agree that a half a gallon of cold brew coffee seems like a lot.
Yeah.
That I've not drank a lot of cold brew coffee, but I recall it being pretty GD strong.
Yeah.
That seems like it's going to throw off your balance quite a bit. And I think I did ages ago, back when Aaron and I were collaborating on this, I used a cold brew kind of approach with my water for the coffee mead, and I think it turned out okay. But man, the more I get into this, the more I am convinced that just throwing some not even ground, but maybe just like rough crushed coffee beans into secondary would be a much better approach than trying to cold brew into your primary brew water before you even get the yeast pitched in there. I would take that approach. I would probably do like maybe an ounce or two at a time, taste it, pull it after a few days and put some fresh stuff on there until you get the amount of coffee flavor you're looking for. Looking at his secondary schedule, he's talking about adding back another half cup of whole bean coffee, and that might be all you really need at the end of the day. That's probably, 3-4 ounces, depending on whether it's ground or not ahead of time. That could be like 5 or 6 if it's ground, but I'm kind of guessing. As far as the other stuff, he's talking about adding back another half a pound of the Bochet honey, cacao extract, vanilla extract. I don't think he's talking about secondary so much as just kind of like a back sweetening and, like flavoring, prepping for bottling kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Definitely think that at that point, you probably want to stabilize so that half pound of honey that you're adding in contributes the sugar you're looking for, frankly, that the coffee and the chocolate are going to require for you to taste it right. Aging it is probably fine. I would age that 4 or 5 months before you add all those extra flavors so that everything has time to develop. Yeah. I think, honestly, the first thing you're going to lose in that is probably going to be the vanilla. I would put that flavoring in right before you put it in a bottle. If you're going to let it sit in secondary for a while, do that first and then add flavoring. But that's my take on it.
Ryan, chocolate, vanilla, coffee mead just sounds amazing. If you left it off right there. Jeff's got a good point. If you're going to let this thing sit in a carboy for months, I'd probably add the vanilla just before I bottled it. maybe a month before I bottled it to get a good soak on the vanilla beans, or whatever kind of vanilla you're going to use. But what's your thoughts here? Take us home, my friend, and we'll wrap the show with this.
Yeah, I like a lot of what Jeff said. I wouldn't add the vanilla until you get ready to till the end. Like that last couple of weeks or so before you want to bottle it. That half a pound of lactose, sure. I think, why not? I mean, you want a coffee, and if you drink coffee with cream and you're adding sugar and vanilla here, yeah. So, that's a heavy amount, but why not? Go for it. I like that the Bochet, no problem. The vanilla, good. The cocoa, good. City Roast Plus. I don't even know what a City Roast is. I mean, I'm still a guy. I know like light roast, medium roast, dark roast. So I don't know whatever that is, but I'll tell you that. I would not add coffee in primary. That's my. If I was going to make a coffee mead again, I wouldn't do it. I made one coffee mead with it in primary, and I've made coffee braggot since then, and added it later on. And so, again, I'd start with a really good Bochet, like your Bochet mead. Start by making your Bochet mead. Add your 3 pounds of Bochet and get that right. You can even add in the lactose. You want to boil the lactose for a minute just to make sure you get everything off of it, and then add that and ferment that up. And then I would add the coffee alone, get that where you want it, in secondary, and then the cocoa and get that where you want it, and then add the vanilla and get the vanilla where you want it, and then bottle it up and drink it up. But I would take that approach to then, throwing it all in the pot, throwing everything in the slow cooker and hoping it turns out all right.
There you go.
Yep.
Hey, in the words of a good friend, Emerald Lagasse, we're going to kick it up a notch next time we come back, bam, in 2 weeks. And I promise we will get to the question about using 50 pounds of peaches in a mead. And then the one about where this guy's wife bought him a fruit press for his birthday. Oh, dude, I can't wait to tackle that one. But, hey, we're going to leave it right there for tonight. Hey, thanks for listening and hanging out for us here with this episode. As a reminder, this is show number 6 on our schedule. Keeping in mind that we're on a 6-2 calendar. We'll be off for the next 2 weeks. So, hey, don't forget, let us know what you're brewing, especially on Mead Day. We might even give you a call. Email us, info@themeadhouse.com, or send us a message on that old Facebook or Twitter deal @themeadhouse. So, hey, in the meantime, happy mead making. That's it for this episode. Ryan, flip the lights off. Jeff, do your thing and slam that door shut. Hey, we'll be back in 2 weeks with episode number 170.